First off, as this hearing has shown, a small number of the department's cases get an outsized level of attention in politics. But the reality is you preside over most of the federal system of mass incarceration. And every day in courtrooms around the country, including St. Louis, prosecutors who ultimately report to you are continuing to disproportionately prosecute disproportionately Black and brown people for disproportionately low-level immigration and narcotics and firearm offenses. And under your watch, the federal incarceration rate has increased for the first time in nearly a decade. Meanwhile, corporate crime enforcement is lower than it was during the Trump administration. The department needs to rethink its entire approach to prosecution.
Oh, Representative Bush with some receipts, actually comparing Merrick Garland to the Trump administration, saying the prosecution of corporate crime is down and the prosecution of low-level crimes, small petty crimes, drug-related crimes, that is up. And we all know who that disproportionately targets. Mondale, your reaction, I mean, this is just like suddenly like a dose of reality into this hearing.
Yeah, I mean, last night my wife and I were with Cori and her husband. So it's funny that we're covering that because we literally were talking about the shortcomings on our side and how we feel our base. And she was, people of color. We were specifically talking about Black men, but I think in this interview, she did a wonderful job of showing how you push back on administration and also showing that there's more to talk about. She goes on to talk about it. There's more to talk about than what's politically advantageous or what's sucking up all of the air in politics. And I think that's a fact. I mean, like these ideas and these questions that we needed to talk about, I wouldn't have, and I pay attention to politics a lot. It's my life. I didn't know that corporate crime prosecution was now under this administration.
Yeah.
And I definitely didn't know that the federal crime prison rate was rising under this administration. Those are important issues, and we definitely need to talk about it, especially when we see the shortcomings of equity in our justice system.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially in this context, and she caveats it, I mean, she opens it by saying, we see the outsized importance that certain so-called crimes are receiving versus every single day this justice system unfairly, comes down on the backs of the poor Black and brown Americans. And that's not news, I guess. That's just the status quo. She has some suggestions, and I love that she gets this in there. This will be our final clip on this.
And I urge you to take specific steps towards ending mandatory minimums and prosecutory misconduct waivers and actively supporting alternatives to incarceration, funding federal public defenders, use of clemency power, and reporting on disparities in federal prosecutions. I'm also deeply concerned about the Bureau of Prisons. Director Peters is not doing enough to address the rampant issues of abuse and mismanagement at the Bureau, which affects both correctional staff and people in custody.
So there she is, she's laying it all out, and mandatory minimums, right? At least study how the justice system is impacting people based on their race, based on their class, right? Like at least look into these things. And it's this invitation. And also, Mondale, I feel like it's an invitation to the Biden administration generally to deliver on a movement that is still so huge and present, which is the Black Lives Matter movement, that is so much bigger than just these flashpoints and these instances, right? It is a grand consensus, especially among young people in this country, that we have to make a change when it comes to the criminal justice system. Where is that change, President Biden? Where is that change, Merrick Garland?
Yeah, also we see someone who understands government beyond what's popular on YouTube, Facebook, or some crazy truth social, right? Like this idea that she had this long list of things that she needed to say to the Department of Justice on behalf of St. Louis that were not got you moments. She literally was telling them in a way that you need to check into this, and also it kind of reminded me of what politics should be. Who knows? Like this idea that we can hold out even when we are the party in charge, i.e. our administration, talking about Biden, then we still have problems with this government that are negatively affecting the people that sent me here to represent them. Whereas when before that, the clips we saw, we just see people with got you moments, are Catholics extremists, or or why are you looking out for Biden, Biden's son? Why you drag your feet? Why you let statute of limitations pass? Not really doing serious politics. And then I think this is, unfortunately, we have become not just people that love reality TV. We've become a people that live reality TV. It's like our lives. If it's not drama, it's not necessary.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, who's gonna be playing those clips on mainstream news of Cori Bush asking and suggesting some real concrete things? And let's be honest, if it was her yelling at Merrick Garland, if it was her, trying to get got you moments off of him, we'd be having a very different conversation. And Republicans would be having a field day over this uppity black representative, actually getting fiery as they're getting over some BS that it doesn't exist.
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.